welcome to week 3 of the training plan. Just as a reminder, this week is identical between all of the advanced training plans from sprint distance to Ironman distance. So even though it says Olympic distance up here, this is an identical week to the week that you're on in your advanced training plan of whichever distance. So first of all, let's look at the duration. 13.5 hours this week, up from 12 hours and 5 minutes last week. But depending on whether you do the longest or the shortest workouts, this could be anywhere from 12 hours 50 on the short end to 14 hours 40 on the long end. So the objective this week is to obviously do the benchmark testing, as you have seen. We should have achieved by now some consistency in training and getting that routine of training frequently back up. And you are also probably already starting to see some fitness gains. So let's see. Let's now do the baseline tests and see exactly where you are with specific testing in each of the 3 disciplines. This will allow us to set training zones in cycling and in running in particular. And it also gives us benchmarks so that we can track your progress when we repeat these tests later on in the plan. It is important to realize that you should never be a slave to training zones or workout targets established through testing. You should always think about what is the intent of this workout, what is the purpose of this workout, and do the workout to the best of your abilities to fulfill that intent. That is the goal, not to necessarily hit a very specific pace or power that may or may not be correct. So if you feel, for example, let's say in a few weeks, you feel that, okay, your fitness has clearly improved quite a lot, and what used to be your threshold, perhaps after doing the tests this week in one discipline, let's say the bike, is now clearly sub-max or sub-threshold for you, and your threshold is clearly higher, and you can feel that very, very clearly in the workout. It's your responsibility to take the executive decision to change the threshold manually. You are an experienced athlete, probably, so you know what riding or running at or swimming at threshold should feel like, and you can take that decision yourself and adjust accordingly. That's one of the things that you have to do when you're on a static training plan. You can't just go through the motions of the plan. You need to still be self-coaching yourself through the training plan. The plan is there as a plan, but it's the execution of the plan that really makes a big difference in terms of how fit you will be on race day. And to the execution of the plan comes the responsibility of, for example, making threshold adjustments. And the same goes if you're sick and lose 2 weeks of training, then you can't just jump back in at the same fitness levels that you used to do. You need to adjust accordingly, of course. So never be a slave to the zones or the workout targets, but follow the intent of the workout. But of course, the zones and workout targets form a good starting point, and they are a great help and are important. So you should do your very best in these tests to get accurate zones. This week, as any other week, keep the easy training easy, but this week is more important than any other week in terms of, like, if you don't do that, then you might actually not feel as fresh as you should for the tests and not have as good a performance as you could in those tests. Some workout highlights. First, just a little mention of one of the short circuits, the shoulders and thoracic spine strength circuit. This one can actually be done before the swim, and that could be a great option. So to just get mobile and supple before getting into the pool, but it can also be done separately. I would advise you to maybe try it before the swim and see if that makes a difference, and then you can maybe take some of the exercises and do them before every swim if you feel so inclined, because it might help you swim with better quality. In terms of the endurance/priming swim, I don't need to talk too much about the actual swim. Is fairly straightforward. What I do want to talk about is that it's 3,500 meters or yards long, and I'm making a mental note here that I'm going to talk about meters and yards slightly later on in this video, but actually I won't, because I will talk about that in the introductory video, so forget about that. And I won't cut this out, I will leave this in. This is just the raw footage. But the longest swim you've done so far is 3,200, now we're getting up to 3,500. So the volume is getting up there, and especially if you're not a strong swimmer, then this can already be the kind of volume that sees you accumulate some swim specific fatigue. And at least if you do everything slightly harder than you should be doing. So make sure in this swim that you don't swim any harder than prescribed. You can see here, easy, 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 steady, steady, steady. Steady does not mean moderate. Steady means an endurance effort. So RPE of 4 to 5 out of 10. It should be your mid to high zone 2 effort, essentially. And so that's basically what you're looking for here. And of course you have some fast swimming there, and you should be doing fast. But everything else, all the easy and the steady swimming, should really be easy or steady, no more. Because if it is, then you might be a bit fatigued tomorrow. You won't be incredibly fatigued, but it's just unnecessary. You'll have a better swim if you practice good intensity control in the endurance priming swim. And then in the actual 1000 meter TT, or 100 plus 1000, in that order, even though the title says 1000 plus 100, we have a standard warm-up, of course, with some intensity and some endurance swimming. But then we go into the 100 meter time trial as the first one. And the key thing here that I want to highlight first is rest as needed to be fresh for the 100 meter or yard TT. So I would recommend after the last 50 of the warm-up to rest for 2 to 3 minutes, because this 100 is balls to the walls. It's relying a lot on creatine phosphate and glycolysis. So you want to really get those systems reset, so to say, and get them down to baseline and not have them be depleted, like the creatine phosphate be depleted after the warm up or anything like that, and let lactate go down again, and so on. So take a 2 to 3 minute rest would be my advice here. And even if you feel that you could be going sooner, then I think that you might be shaving another second or two off your 100 if you rest properly before the 100 meter time trial. And there's not much pacing going on in a 100 meter time trial. It's pretty much all out. There is a little bit of pacing, of course. If you absolutely all out sprint the first 25, like you know that you've done 50s where you are struggling in the last 15 or 20 meters. That's happened to every single one of us many, many times, I'm sure. So there's a little bit of pacing, but not that much. So it's absolutely fine to have a positive split. That's okay. Just go hard and make sure you don't have anything left at the end. Then between the 100 and the 1000, we have kind of a rest and re-warm up set. The main goal, of course, is to recover properly from the 100 and be ready and fresh for the 1000, but also to not get cold or stiff or anything. So as long as you achieve that intent, you could adjust this as you feel fit. Maybe do more swimming or do less swimming, do more resting. I wouldn't do any less resting than this, but maybe more. That's okay. So basically you are looking to do at least 4 minutes or so of passive resting and at least 10 minutes or so of swimming, which is mostly very, very easy, but a few little bursts of intensity as well to re-warm up. That would be the general principle. The key thing is to be 100% for the 1000 all out. And in the 1000 meter time trial, pacing is very important. You could even use a Finese tempo trainer, a metronome, to help yourself. But if you do, don't be a slave to it. Feel free to swim ahead of it or swim behind it if you notice that, okay, you set a pace that was not realistic or it was too slow for you. Then just ignore it and keep swimming on and swim to your own pace and perceived effort. Now, how would we use these results? The swim is mostly a benchmark, really. So it's for you to see where you are and then later to be able to repeat that. And even in the future, when maybe you're not using the training plan, this is a great benchmark swim that you can use frequently in the future to see where you are in swimming. So we are not directly prescribing paces or anything from your results here, because in the swim, it's not. Yeah, I think that I and 99% of coaches agree that swim prescriptions should be mostly RPE based, like it's mostly feel based. That is the principle of this plan. Your threshold pace might on any given day might be slower or faster than it was, and you can't really know your pace in the pool anyway, except with some certain tools, goggles, etc. But most people don't have that. So So basically, we're not using these tests to prescribe intensities. Although we do use the term T-pace as a guideline. T-pace is your 1,000 meter pace, the average over 1,000 meters or 1,000 yards. So we use that as a guideline in some workouts to say that, okay, you can aim for roughly T-pace -2 or T-pace between T-pace -2 and T-pace +2. So if your T-pace is 130 per 100, that would mean, okay, these intervals do them between 128 and 132. But again, those are guidelines, and they will be secondary to the effort prescription that those workouts will give. And you can add your threshold pace into your training peak settings if you want to. So that's absolutely fine. We have instructions here and the recommended zones. How to set your threshold pace, I recommend using a factor of 1.03. So multiply your T-pace by a factor of 1.03. So for example, if you swam the 1,000 meters in 15 minutes, that is 130 per 100 meters or yards. Then multiply 90 seconds, so that is 1 minute 30 seconds, by 1.03, and then you get 92.7 seconds, or rounded, that is 1 minute 33 seconds per 100. Set that as your threshold pace, and then follow these instructions to set the rest of your zones if you want to do that. Here as well you have more explanations of why we believe in RPE-based swim prescription rather than pace-based RPE prescription. So that's the swim test. Then the bike test, I won't spend as much time on it. What I will say is do this on the TT bike, in the TT position. That is important because that is how you should do the majority of your training from now on. Not all of your training necessarily, but a lot of your training. And whether to do this indoors or outdoors, so on the indoor trainer or outdoors, depends on where you do the majority of your training. If you do the majority of your training indoors, then do the test indoors. If you do the majority outdoors and you have a good place where you can actually do the time trial, then do it outdoors. But if you don't have a good stretch of road where you can actually do a 20-minute effort, then feel free to do it indoors even if you are training outdoors. And then maybe you just have to adjust the power targets a little bit for outdoor training because your indoor power might be slightly lower than your outdoor power. Other than that, we have a standard warm-up with some easy riding, and this is all based on perceived effort. So again, this is your responsibility to, for example, do the easy thing really easy, but make sure that the ramp here is quite hard so that you get that intensity into the warm-up, and of course the sprint as well. In particular, the last 10 minutes, which are mostly easy zone 1, just one 10-second all-out sprint in there, these can be really, really easy. Like even if you have an FTP of around 300 watts, you can easily do these at like 120 watts or so. So that's kind of appropriate, I think, 120 to 140 watts. Then the time trial itself, you will need to pace well here. You should of course go deep, but don't go deep right away, because if you need to hold a very deep effort for 20 minutes, then you probably won't manage to do that. So you need to pace here, aim for a fairly even split. That will be your best chance of getting a really good effort out of yourself. And then as for finding your threshold and training zones, I have a link to the calculator where you do that here. That will take you to this, and watch the video instructions here. But make sure that you are signed into your Google account and click File and make a copy, because you can't do edits in this original version because that is the one that is a master template. You need to make your own copy and then you can start modifying it. And so here you would add your average power and heart rate and everything, and you would get your output zones here or here. There is there are good descriptions there for how to use the calculator. So go with that and then add them in your Training Peaks zones, which I have linked to a help article if you don't know how to do that here as well. It is very important that you set your threshold in your Training Peaks zones. For example, let me see if I can drag another athlete into view. Just bear with me for 1 second here. So here I believe you can see this screen where we have an actual athlete, a demo athlete. So in terms of the power threshold, for example, it's important that you you know that the default power will be used if you don't have any other activity. But if, for example, you have bike power, then bike power will override default power. So if the bike power is in your training peak settings and you get 300 watt FTP, then you need to set your bike power to 300 watt, and what your default power is doesn't really matter, because it's the bike power that will be applied to your workouts. And the threshold number, you need to set that in your zones, because otherwise the zones will not scale correctly for your future workouts. So they will scale to whatever is set in your zones. So that is important, and that applies for the run as well. And yeah, then just if you test indoors but train outdoors, then adjust for that. Maybe you choose to target 10 watts higher outdoors because you know that that's the difference roughly that you experience, or vice versa, whatever it is, you should adjust for that. Again, do the test on a TT bike. And the run TT, just some quick notes. This is again a 20-minute. Well, one more note about the bike TT, by the way. I use 94% rather than 95% of 20 minutes as FTP because I think that is a better reflection. Actually, I use 93%. Sorry, 93% rather than 95% because I think that's a better reflection of true threshold power. Then on the run, the equipment that you use here should be what you use in your fast training runs as well. So don't wear carbon plate shoes for this test unless you also wear them in training for all of your fast workouts, but rather use whatever shoes you might use for your regular hard run workouts. The warm-up, similarly to the bike, do the easy stuff very easy and the hard stuff as prescribed. And then pacing, similarly to the bike, you should go deep, of course. By the end of this, you should be knackered, and it should feel like a 10 out of 10 in terms of effort for sure. But you need to pace from the start because 20 minutes is a long time, and you can't hold on to a crazy pace, a suicide pace for 20 minutes. That's just not possible. So pacing is important. Aim for a fairly even split, and that will mean that the first few minutes might feel a little bit easier than you think they might feel, but then soon, very soon, actually, way before halfway into the time trial, it will be very, very hard. So that's how you should approach pacing here. And then finding your threshold and your training zones is the exact same way that I already explained for the bike. Instructions are provided here in the comments below, and the links needed, including to the Scientific Triathlon Training Zones calculator. We use 94%, I believe, for the run pace and run power from the 20-minute test as your threshold pace or threshold power. And then finally, on the weekend, you have the option to go longer in the bike and in the run as well. But in particular in the bike, you have the option to extend by 45 minutes, so quite a lot. But note that this is only an option. 2 hours, 30 minutes is plenty at this point, so don't feel the need that you have to always go the longest options. Actually, our recommended options are the ones that are prescribed here, so 2 hours, 30 minutes in this case. And 3 hours, 15 minutes are only for people that know that they can do it and they are pretty sure that they will benefit from doing more. Not just for people that know that they can do it, but actually for people that know that it will be beneficial or are fairly certain it will be beneficial. And then on Sunday, we have a double workout, so you can choose the order. It's not important whether you do the bike first or the run first, because it's not necessarily meant to be a brick workout, but it can be a brick workout if you want to. But yeah, the bike isn't very challenging, so my personal preference on a day like this would be to treat the run as my most important workout and do that first on fresh legs, with legs feeling good, and then do the bike after, even if it's on slightly fatigued legs. But that's up to you and your personal preference how you do that. All right, good luck with the tests this week, and I'll talk to you next week.